Hi Meghdeep,
Hi Aditya.
welcome back.
Thank you.
So, after knowing your musical journey, a lot of people got inspired and they contacted you, your school friends, teachers, etc.
Yes.
And they were happy to see the Bhopal boy doing well in
Yes.
Bombay.
Yes.
So, today in this part, let's talk about how you exactly produce a song. We'll take an example of your choice and let's let the audience see how exactly you kind of, start working when you get a song
Yeah.
from a composer.
Yeah.
And let's talk along.
So I'd like to share my recent one, Noor, from the film Noor, composed by Amaal Mallik and sung by Arman. And as I claimed, as I quoted in my last interview, that I've had a great vibe with Amaal, so far. The amount of receptivity he shows towards my ideas. So Noor has been a sort of a song that has been very close to my heart when I produced it, and because of a lot of experiments that Amaal let me do in this, So today I'll be sharing that song with you.
Sure. Let's go and check it out.
So the beginning, Amaal gave me just the vocals that we recorded in the studio, and this is Amaal's dummy basically.
दिल ये निकम्मा बाज ना आए उल्टे सुल्टे पेच लड़ाए दिल ये निकम्मा बाज ना आए उल्टे सुल्टे पेच लड़ाए अजब गजब है इसके तेवर जरा जरा सी बात लेकर करे तमाशे मचा दे ये हल्ला उफ ये नूर वल्ला उफ ये नूर वल्ला कुछ बात है इसमें जरूर अतरंगिया इसकी मशहूर वल्ला 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 उफ ये नूर.
So the voice came to me like this.
Okay.
Like that's how Amaal.
So that's how you get a song from a composer.
Correct.
He'll just give you a voice.
Correct.
And now you're supposed to decorate it.
Exactly. So Amaal usually he sends me a composition with a rough sketch of harmonies or suggested chords or stuff. But for this he just made me play the harmonium with him, randomly, and he just recorded the vocals because he wanted me to do everything from scratch, with no hints of harmonies, with no hints of chords and stuff like that. So and as per the character of Noor, the film's character, so she was shown as a very pretty much confused girl, not so happy about her life, but yet trying to live up.
So
to
all
it.
this input is also important?
It's very important because when you make a film song, you make music for a situation, right?
Okay.
You don't make it.
So you need to know the story also.
Exactly.
You just can't.
Exactly. You need to know the situation. You need to know the story. You need
Does
to know
that
the
help
characters.
you in the arrangement?
Definitely, it does.
Selection of instruments.
Exactly. So the kind of elements you choose in a song are basically to highlight or underline the character of.
Correct. So in this case, what is the situation given to you?
So this was basically the title track.
Okay.
But it was also a track, also a song that was describing Noor, that talked about Noor,
Okay.
that what kind of girl
Person.
she is, and and in the trailer it was shown that she was, all fuzzy about her things. She was not liking the way things were around her, and yet she was trying to live life to the fullest. So the interesting part about this song is that it made me buy a lot of guitars actually.
Okay.
So so the first thing that you hear in the song is a ukulele. So I wanted, instead of borrowing it from anybody or something, I said I'll buy one for this,
Okay.
So I ended up buying 2-3 things. So I bought a uke and I came up with this riff. So I started the song with that.
What about the vocal?
Vocals I just did Ghar Pe Baithe Badhiya. I just I just layered it thrice and it went like that. So I developed on that. I started developing the song on that. So that's how I thought the song would start up, and and it sort of worked for both of us. I thought instead of putting up a melody to start the song, I just started with a uke comp and the song was in. Uske baad, as per the character sketch, I said that she is always into layers of emotions, layers of thoughts and everything. So the speciality of this song, the way I produced it, was that there were hardly chords under melody. It was all phrases under melody. So even if the first phrase, if you see, it's basically playing a layer of, they were not chords, but it was a secondary melody that was happening beneath them. I thought that why to play chords necessarily, or why to have fixed harmonies, rather than so
this Y2 part ना Meghdeep, how did you think of it? Because ऐसा होता है कई बार चलो यार गाना का यही स्ट्रक्चर है, इसी तरह से गाने बनते हैं,
correct,
तो चल मैं भी वही कर लेता हूँ. Why did you think of experimenting or
so the inspiration
changing?
came from the part where it came from my collaborations with Mikey Meghdeep, and I often played gigs for him for the Bartender project, and plus I've produced scores for him and Befikr. So I got this inspiration from him, the way he writes out parts and everything. So there were few instances where he used to write things this way, and it turned out to be an inspiration for me that why to have why to have definite chords, and why not a second melody. I realized that many producers have done that experiment, and
so these experiments you do in your project studio, or do you do it when the actual recording?
So usually I start off the writing process here at my place,
okay.
And for example, if you see, I've basically dubbed flute and as I said that I dub my guitars a lot. I finish off the dubs of my guitars while I'm producing something. So I usually dub most of the parts at my home, and so these are guitars, these are the flute, everything I dubbed at my place. So usually I prefer that while I'm writing music, I usually don't wait to hire a studio and presume that a guitar would happen on this track,
right.
And so rather I choose to dub it right away.
So these kind of dubbings and all, so you have to call an artist over.
So as a guitarist, I dub everything
right.
over here.
Right.
Flutes usually I call up Tejas or somebody.
Correct.
Like that.
So what happens is, do you have to check with the composer that I'm doing flute or I'm doing sitar on this song? Do you have to kind of take some permission?
Partially. So usually I let him know. In my case, Amaal leaves me totally free that do whatever you like on the track. Just keep me noticed. Keep me notified that.
So everybody works in a different fashion.
Everybody works in a different fashion.
Okay.
So in case of Amaal, he usually leaves me wild with the track. He just says, do whatever you like.
Right.
And so I don't hesitate calling up musicians, and and the same is in this case where I didn't hesitate to call up musicians and
right.
Stuff like that.
So that's how you dub the flute.
So yes, so and I stress a lot on getting in live elements within the track, and because it gives a very different edge to the whole track.
Don't you, like most other people do some sketching with samples first and then dub the real musician?
So it's a good idea to do, but usually what happens is when you prepare a sketch and when you call another musician to play on it, you limit the musician on that particular sketch. So it's important to let the musician also play around in a space. So I was working on the M2, the second music for this song, and I had left the whole section empty,
Okay.
And I asked Amaal that let's book live room 1 and let's dub stomps over it,
Okay.
So I had an idea. So it was basically a totally non-written session where I had not written any parts of the song.
But how did you know how many bars to leave?
I just left a random space
Okay.
between the song, and I
Do you have to finish a song within 3 minutes of, because it's a title track? So बोलेंगे भाई finish it within 4 minutes. Those kind of
Not really,
inputs are there?
not on this one, not on
Okay.
this one.
Okay.
But also it's not about 3 or 4 minutes or the limitation of time limit of the song. But when you make the song, when you're in the process, you realize that how long the song should be, how long you can digest it as a musician yourself. So,
Okay.
so you know, because if I cannot digest my own song
Hmm.
for a particular amount of time, how would the audiences do?
Right,
You know.
right.
So usually the litmus test of the song happens here in the room itself,
Okay.
where you realize that the song is getting elongated or it's too short
Okay.
for the taste of.
So you get an idea.
So we usually get an idea,
Okay.
and it's also important to keep a reality check on your music, whatever you're creating,
Right,
because
right.
as an artist you would tend to flow around with the song. You would tend to get in the flow and get
Right.
lost.
How did you decide that you want to keep a stomp section and not maybe a dholak tabla section?
So actually, I did a dholak tabla section also on this song, but in a very tricky manner. Now, there was a groove earlier that I made, which had a dholak tabla pattern. But Amaal and I both arrived at a consensus that no, let's not keep a groove of it, So in the stanzas end, when we hit the end of stanza, I've actually used a dholak tabla pickup, and it goes off.
Okay.
It's no more. It's no more there. I'll show you the example. So it's just a small pickup. It's just that much.
Okay.
And it comes in and it goes out.
When you went to Yashraj for the stomp recording,
Hmm.
who did you call?
So strangely, I had my percussion player Akshay,
Okay.
who played dholak tabla on this, and I had the same day we had the backing vocals recording also. So basically, I got the backing singers and Akshay to do the stomps,
Okay.
and yeah, that's how it happened actually. And
So can you play that for us?
yes, when we went to YRF with this session, it was basically out and out an empty section in this song. There was nothing out here.
So how many tracks did you leave empty?
It was like totally a blank session.
Okay.
So if you check the second stanza's end, there's a whole lot of new color that comes in after in the
So
second.
can you show us the change?
Yeah. So this is the ending of stanza. So the idea behind the second music was to make it sound like a jam session, to make it sound like there are musicians sitting together and making music, or they're throwing out expressions and all. And first of all, it was just a jam between a flute and a guitar, which I added stomps, which I added with the stomps and the chorus section. And there are different layers of chorus happening over there. And later on, I called up Kishore Soda and the other brass section to basically join in the second half of M2. So it's a jugalbandi between flute and guitars that joins into a trumpet phrase and comes back, So I'll show you layers by layers that what
Sure.
exactly I did in the second music.
Let's see.
As you can see, you see two phrases of flute and two phrases of guitar. That was basically the idea behind, it sounds like a jamming. And when combined with the chorus shouts and the stomps, it somewhere came to sound like this. As you can see behind the trumpet, there are still a lot of chorus parts happening. If played with the trumpet. And then I had to end it with the phrase of Walla Walla because that was the theme. Walla Walla. So I thought, why to bring in the chorus again? I brought in the brass section to play it.
Meghdeep, how do you decide about the chorus composition? You know, that it'll have how many female singers, how many male singers, or only male, only female. How do you decide that?
So usually I follow my instincts when it comes to vocal arrangements and all. And not everything is planned when I take a session to
So in
the
this
studio.
song, how did you?
So in this song, usually I took up little like small phrases to enhance certain words in a song, you know. And there were also vocal beds where it was just added for a feeling, you know. And also as M2 suggests that there were a lot of chaotic elements in this song. There were sounds, there were shouts, there were melodic parts and everything. So usually when I go to a session, it's not planned. It's not really planned. I do have a rough structure inside my head.
So how many were there in this song?
So usually, I think for this one we had 4 singers.
Okay.
We took multiple takes.
And how do you
for
call
it.
them over? I mean, use a messenger or?
Usually I have my friends around, so
Okay.
I usually give them a
Okay.
call and they come over. But when it comes to cine musicians, people who like the brass section or the string section, so we usually have a messenger
Okay.
to call them because I'm not really friends with them. So, but yeah, when it comes to interactive musicians session, you know, I usually call up my friends. And
Okay. Does experimentation happen in the studio also, in the sense, or you tell them that this is what you have to do, just sing and
So
please do?
usually when the music is written, there's not much scope of experimentation over there because there are some parts in a song that you really want them the way they're supposed to happen, you know. And yes, when there's a scope of experimentation, the way I did, where I left Kishorji to play a solo, you know,
Mhm.
and he played his heart out on that. You know.
So he also listens to the melody and
Definitely.
other.
So I gave him a 16-bar progression, 8-bar progression that you have to play on this, keeping in mind the chords and everything. So that's where he improvised and stuff like that. But usually it's a mix of, it's a blend of both the things, you know. Speaking of layers, I interestingly used a slide guitar in the first music, which leads into a collage of horns, chorus, and a second clean guitar patch. I wanted a clean, like a normal fret guitar piece on that, but again I thought that I'll better use a slide and give it that bluesy feel, and you know, and in the stanza, again not using the chords but using another layer of melody, you know. So the whole idea of this song dwells on the idea of having a melody below a melody, and that's how I usually for this song I was sketching parts over here, and I took them to the studio and recorded brass and chorus over it. So I'll play you the first music and I'll take you into the stanza.
Walla, oof, yeah, Noor.
observe this piece, there are actually two layers of instrumentations happening over here. One is the brass part. The brass parts are joined by the chorus. And another guitar solo is running over this. Now, interestingly, this guitar solo, the slide guitar, I've processed it in a very wicked manner. If you listen to the original signal, it's a very simple. It's a very raw. Adding a tape thing to it. Now, because it was a slide thing, I added a pitcher to it and later on passed it through an amp just to give it that cleaner edge. And then I gave it another octave. So basically I passed it through a pitch shifter that gave it another octave, and it sounded something like this. So the sound basically changed drastically just because of those two additions, a strict pitch correction as well as a pitch shift to the octave, and treating it like a guitar, like not like an audio clip or something, but treating it like a guitar in a passing through a hardware, or something like that. But the whole idea of processing this was to actually make it sound like it's, because I don't have amps right here in my place, so I amped it inside the in the box, and the result was kind of happy. While I was working on the stanza, I left it entirely empty. The first half I left entirely empty. I didn't want a bass line, I didn't want any chords, I didn't want any counterparts, anything on this stanza, because I had a surprise for the second half of it. Now the second half of it again has no chords to it, I would say no standing harmonies to it. It was a weird. I took inspiration from Mario, basically, our old video games, So there are sounds in this song that are derived out of those old video games and cartoons that we've grown up listening to and stuff like that. So I came up with the phrase then. So it's very much a blend of those sounds and the melodic style and all. And I brought it down to the stanza of both of these, both of the stanzas in the second half. So for this, I clubbed guitars, bass guitar, piano, and made out a phrase that sounded like this. This was basically the harmony of second stanza. First half totally empty. And while working on the horn section again, I had written a brass section which was kind of simple, just 2 or 3 harmonies. So while I was dubbing the horn section in YRF, I added, interestingly, some thirds and fifths to the harmony. So it turned out like this. So your question of the fact that are there any experimentations or anything happening while dubs. They do happen even on written music, you know. So when I added those thirds, they beautifully contributed to the growth of it. And the first, the M1 that I used as a slide guitar is now the counter of my stanza's end. So it's basically about creating the right elements and putting them into the correct place, you know. And when I went to the second stanza, the lead guitar, the slide guitar was again sort of monotonous for me, because to use the same part again as a harmony to the end of this thing. So I got the same notes on the flute, and it came out kind of beautiful. Basically the same part. It's basically the same slide guitar part that's being played. So that's how the song took its shape, pretty much. And one important aspect was that I tried to do everything live, everything, you know, I tried to keep it away from any sort of samples or any sort of ready-made stuff, you know. So even snaps and claps are recorded live with the chorus section itself, you know. And also my focus was to give it a very analog sound, a very natural sound, and not something that would sound in a programmed song, something like that. So I tried to keep as many as live instruments, as many as dubbed elements, and not samples and stuff like that. And there's a lot of writing happening over here. It's less chords, it's less standing harmony, it's more of counters, more of melody over melody concept, basically, that every phrase has a melody happening below it, you know. So that's how. So Noor was basically, for me, a very weird, different experiment that turned delightful.
Correct. So you're not following the typical Bollywood trend of, you know, ye hit hai to isi ko follow karo.
Correct. I think because I don't believe in templates, honestly. So every time I make a song, I produce something, I usually don't follow a template, you know. It's kind of going on really heavily right now, that, you know, keep the song really simple, just have a kick and a bass and maybe a piano, and, you know. So but on the contrary, I try to you know, change the sound of my song every time I do something, you know.
Nice.
And sound of it, just not by the tones of samples, but the way you write something, you know. So the way you write something changes the sound of it, you know. And this was my attempt to actually break my own chains of being a ballad producer, you know, and do something that was more peppy and more on the experimental zones. Yes, yet having a commercial outlook to it.
Correct. No, it's sounding very fresh, so good job.
Thank you.
Meghdeep, thank you for sharing the intricacies of making of a song, and wish you all the very best for your next film,
Thank
songs,
you.
and other projects.
Thank you.
Thanks, and we'll
Thank
see
you.
you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.